Hello, my name is Sarah, and this is going to be a roundup of the books that I've read the past 2 weeks, and there were a lot more than I thought, so this might be a long one. We're going to go straight into this list, and I'm actually going to talk about these, I think, in the order of my least favorite to my most favorite. And starting at the bottom of the list is, sadly, a NetGalley arc that I had, and that was Sorry Bro by Talene Voskuni. I believe I said that right. Maybe not. Hopefully. This one, I'm gonna be real with you, I almost DNF'd. I have full thoughts on my Goodreads and my blog and Storygraph, all those places. If anything I get is a NetGalley arc, I do a full review on all my, platforms that I have available. This one was, it was uncomfortable to read, I'm gonna be honest with you here. I think, so the summary of this is a young Armenian woman breaks up with her fiance at the very beginning of the book when he proposes in a way she didn't want. She realizes she wasn't happy, so they break up. I'll return to those quotation marks. And he goes away on a trip, and she agrees with her mother to go on a Explore Armenia sort of event. She's going to all these speeches, she's going to go to these dances. It's put on by the community to introduce young people to their culture. She agrees to this to meet a man. Her mother wants her to get married, and the premise is simply that over the course of this exploration of her heritage and culture, she meets a woman, they fall in love, and it's pitched as a rom-com. Someone online accurately described it as a rom-cringe. My biggest complaint, and this is as a person who is not of Armenian descent, is that from the beginning of the book, the main character is dismissive, actually says all these genocides from my people's history is a real bummer, and then proceeds to speak like that about the whole thing the whole way through. And I believe what the author was going for was like a look she learns and she changes and she grows, and really it wasn't there for me. It didn't work. It was very cringe. It was very off-putting, disrespectful, and that's coming from somebody, it made me feel bad. I said, that's a bit much. It's a bit much. Also, the main love interest, it's a single point of view story too, which don't typically work for me, so that's that was a me thing. But the main love interest is a Wiccan. She's Wiccan, and she, uses the word. She does the ritual. She's in a coven. The character seems almost like this is fetishized. Like she gets really into that, and the main character, it's real weird and very icky the way she talks about her and her religion, and I just was uncomfortable. The book made me uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I can't recommend it. I also know that the author has been out in reviewer spaces, like responding to negative reviews, which is unfortunate. It's not really something I would say you should be doing. Reviews are for readers, not so much authors, but that's unfortunate for her. I will not be picking up any more of her work. Just a miss. Moving on. The other main miss for me was Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell. This was just not the book for me. This, I think, will work fantastic for a YA audience. It was paced very oddly. The beginning of the book starts off with a bang, almost literally, of flowers, just explosion of flowers, and she is beat down from the start. She is attempting to become a registered witch so she can help the people of this seemingly fantasy world. I still am unclear on if it's fantasy or an alternate our world. Anyway, she can't control her magic, and it's basically running wild. She can't control it in any way, shape, or form. She will attempt to make a healing potion and instead make a poison, that sort of thing. And she blames all this on her mother, who we are told over and over and over again throughout the story is a terrible person, who is basically a terrorist, so on and so forth. And she accidentally poisons her father in a way. I believe it's on the front flap what happens. I'm not gonna extrapolate just so I don't completely spoil it. And from there, she enters into a deal with a childhood friend to save her father. This went from bang, beat the character down, high action, something tragic happens, to slow, meandering sort of pace, and then lots of yelling that somehow solved everything. And suddenly a love story to an ending that was not completely an ending. I think perhaps this is meant to be the beginning to a series. I probably won't continue the series. I really had high hopes for this one, but it didn't work. The love story was I didn't get any of the chemistry. The pacing was off. The whole climax of the story was just, I'm going to yell at it and let it fix itself. And her super evil mother was mainly just a neutral person who didn't abide by these ruling council's rules. She did bad things, but she was also doing good things. It's one of those things like damned if you do, damned if you don't. And she just took the I don't care route. And I don't know, maybe I just find that a little weird to phrase that type of person as truly evil. I just didn't get the evilness that we were described over and over and over again in the story. So Flowerheart was a miss. Can't say I recommend it. Vibes were fine, but I think instead of world building, the author went for vibes, and so it left it really weird. Like I said, I'm still not entirely sure what the setting of this was supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be a fantasy world that feels very close to ours, but instead it read weirdly like our world, but with fantasy elements. So anytime something like a location was named, it was a little weird to think, oh wait, no, this is a fantasy world. So no thank you. I'll pass. The next one is more of a 3-star. It just was not for me, and that was Breath of Mischief by Marcy Kate Connolly. I'm trying to read these off their little thumbnails. I just think this is best suited to a middle grade audience. Like with Flowerheart, it's going to work better for its age bracket. This one is structured well, it's written well. I think it's going to really click for a lot of those younger readers. It just didn't quite click for me. This is a classic prophecy, sort of riddle, save the guardian sort of thing. Our main character is a windling, an orphan that the wind has taken in and has raised them in their cloud castle with a young griffin, which is on the cover. And the wind is captured by someone, and they are given an impossible riddle to solve to save the wind. But at the end, you're left with this whole question of, do you solve the riddle and possibly give someone power that they shouldn't have? Or do you, sacrifice something for the greater good? Fun, full of magic, but very folktale lyrical in style. So it's written at a remove, and it's very traditionally punctuated by the tropes you expect from a journey fantasy. So, they get the riddle, they solve the first one. Oh no, there's an altercation, they lose an item, they find the next thing, that sort of thing. So just not quite for me, but it was fun, and I recommend it for younger fantasy readers who are getting into the genre, especially the middle grade age range, which is I think where it's targeted. Moving up to books that I more really enjoyed. The first one we'll talk about is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, which is a romance novel. This is a super buzzy one that was not traditionally, it was indie published and then picked up by Bloom Books and traditionally published. It is part of the Dreamland Billionaires series, and this is about a set of brothers who are billionaires and heirs to what is basically a Disneyland, and the girls who win their hearts along the way. I did enjoy this. This is about Rowan and Zara, and Rowan has vowed, to just be efficient, to do what he has to do to make his company succeed and to never fall in love. The classic broken hero. And Zara is our bubbly, devoted employee who writes a drunken proposal on how one of the attractions at this, not Disneyland, can be fixed, and she is roped into helping him create a new attraction / fix the park for his part of inheritance that he has to earn. I really liked the dialogue in this. It was snappy and funny, and the two really bounced off each other in a way that, doesn't really happen in real life, but in romance novels it's very fun to read. I just think it was too long. Weirdly, it's not even that long. It is, let's see, a little over 400 pages, 440 pages. I think it could have been like 300 pages and it would have been great. There was a chunk of time, perhaps right about here, where it just, from like here to here, we didn't need it. It was just too long. I have heard the second and third ones are a lot better, so I will continue the series. And the next romance that I read, which was absolutely fantastic, highly recommend. I have my own copy coming next week when it actually comes out, is Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. This is maybe I've talked about this. If I have, I apologize, but if I haven't, I'm going to do it again because I loved it. This is the story of a young woman in a magical Regency era London who has seemingly been cursed, and she needs to figure out who has cursed her and why they cursed her. And in doing so, she falls in with another, well, not young, but another lady of the town, and they, escapades ensue and they fall in love. I loved this. This was unexpected because I expected just a standard Regency and I should have known better. Alexis Hall is one of my favorite writers for a reason. He always does something a little different. This was told from the point of view of Puck. I believe it's Puck from, the mythology. The fairy who follows people around and causes mischief. And he follows these people around and he causes mischief. But he also records their story because that's his job. He's a storyteller. And it's just so fun to see his character as a narrator come through, but also how he captures the characters within the story. I loved it. I sincerely want another book in this series. The secondary characters to this, our main character's cousin and her best friend, were absolutely a joy. In fact, I think the strongest character in the entire book was one of those secondary characters. So I really genuinely hope that we're going to get a book about her. I almost wonder if Alexis Hall didn't love writing her more than he liked writing the rest of the characters, because she really just had so much page time and she really shined. If you read it, you know. If you know, you know, as they say. This was a great read. If you like romance books, if you like fantasy romance but of a more funnier bend, then definitely give this one a shot. If you don't like funny books, don't read this. I know some people don't, so just full transparency. If you don't like funny, you're not gonna like it. But if you enjoy humor in your books, this is a great one to pick up. I laughed so hard so many times. Another funny book. Yes, making sure I'm not skipping anything. Yes. Another funny book is, and I told you I had a lot of books to talk about, Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. I picked this up because it won SPFBO 8, I do believe. Yes, 9 has just begun. SPFBO 8, which is self-publishing book off or something, blog off, where self-published authors submit a ton of books, and through a panel of bloggers and judges, they select a winner. Now, a lot of times these winners end up being traditionally published later on. If you go back through the history of this contest, you'll see a lot of books that are now widely circulated. A lot of people know of them. And Olivia Atwater won this year with Small Miracles. This was very good. This is one of those books where about this much of the book, this first chunk, I was like, this is okay. This is okay. It's like a 3.5. Like a 3.5 or a 4-star read. But this last little bit where they talk about grief and everything comes to a head, I was sitting out on my back porch reading, sobbing, just tears streaming down my face. I will cry, I will tear up at a book, but it takes a lot for me to like set the book down and just sit there. And that's what I did. Now, I have a lot of grief in my past, so it's something that I struggle with, so this hit me really hard right there. So if you don't deal with grief, if you don't like books about grief, ultimately this is going to be one to skip. But oh wow, there was one line in this that just broke me open. And this is the story, I didn't even describe it, of Gadriel, the fallen angel of petty temptations. Gadriel fell because they didn't believe that chocolate should be a sin, and chocolate was for some reason a sin. And now, instead of being the angel of small miracles and a guardian angel, they are now the angel of petty temptations. And they are hired by one of their they call each other siblings, but one of their former angel cohorts to possibly make a woman sin because she has just too many goody points. There is a point system in this. It's very funny. Sin and goodness have a point ranking, and that's how it determines, your metric right here. Cumulative sin metric. Her metric was too high. She didn't have any sins. So her, I can't remember, it's Bass something. Her angel friend's like, hey, I need you to just, have her eat some chocolate every once in a while. I mean, come on. She's almost too perfect. So she sets out to make Holly Harper, I believe that was her name, Holly Harper, Holly Harker sin, and how she gets entangled up in Holly's life and her family. And very good. Fantastic book. Again, it deals with grief, especially at the end, and it will hit hard, but it's very fun and very entertaining. If you like Good Omens, this would be something to pick up. This has a very Good Omens sort of feeling to it, in the humor and this like setup, angels and demons, all that stuff. So if you enjoyed Good Omens, I would try that. I don't know if I've talked about Mercy either by Sarah Kate. So very quickly, this is the third Salacious Players Club book. This is about Bo and Maggie. Bo and Maggie. I like this one okay. Bo needs a lot of therapy. So much therapy. Maggie needs some too, but Bo really needs therapy. Bo is the son of the male interest in the first book, Praise. He is kind of a dick. He's a lot of a dick. And it is his almost redemption story, his coming around story, and his romance with Maggie, who is one of Emerson, his father's partners. There's an age gap in this. He is the sub in the relationship, the sub-dom relationship, and he is the sub. And I really liked some of the stuff she did, especially with Emerson, with Bo, and how he is working through a lot of his like not repressed trauma, maybe repressed trauma, but like his ideas of what a man should be and a relationship should be and how he shouldn't care or he should care about other things. And I liked Maggie coming to terms with the fact that, she can be a sexual woman, she can be someone who pursues her desires, and she's still a good person. She was brought up in a kind of repressed household, and I liked that exploration. It was very long. I don't know, it just didn't quite hit for me. I did like it. I think I ultimately gave it like a 3.5 of 4 stars on Goodreads, but it's still not as good as Give Me More or Praise for me. The next one I have to read is The Highest Bidder, and I know that one's been a bit of a miss for people, so I'll try and get through it soon. I don't want to put it off if it's not going to be great. And I think the last book that I have, which is probably the best book besides one I will mention because it has its own review coming out, or it has its own review out depending on when this video goes up, is The Way Spring Arrives and Other Stories. This is from a visionary team of female and non-binary creators, edited and collected by Yu Shin and Regina Kanyu Wang? I don't hardly ever give short story collections 5 stars that stick with me. This one's going to be one that's very close. Right now it's sitting at a 4.5. And it's one of those things, if I go back to it, if I find myself picking it up in the future, I will probably bump this up to a 5. I can't really talk a whole lot about the stories in here because it is a collection. There are essays in here, there are stories in here, it's a bit of a mix, and all of these are written and translated by Chinese authors or from Chinese, and they are all really worth a read. I think there was maybe one story that I ended up not enjoying so much, and one essay that went a little over my head. Some of the essays in here talk about things like language and how gender in language is different depending on the language and where you're from, and how gendering language sometimes destroys the actual meaning behind the myth. Some myths have characters changing gender halfway through, changing their sexuality halfway through, or their actual sex, depending on like the divinity of the person and their abilities. So that was very interesting. A couple of those spoke on that. A lot of the stories are very mythological or folklore inspired. A lot of Chinese translated work that we get is, at least 2 or 3 of these gave me really big Danmei vibes, which it actually does talk about that in this collection, how the online web novel space in China exploded and grew, and Danmei was part of that. And it mentions Danmei in the essay, how it is one of those locations, and how that space is possibly something. And I think I touched on this in the Danmei vlog from months ago. A lot of people, Danmei is almost like a way of a female writer in China's way of bucking, traditional sexual expectations, the housewife who doesn't ask for anything, a way to seek out and see that romance that some people don't get in their lives and they look for in a more outside of the traditional space. It's very hard for me to put into words exactly. I'm not quite that smart. I would recommend you read this or look it up. I will try to remember to put in the description the name of the essay and the essayist, but I know there's at least a couple of articles online that quote it, so you can look at that. But outside of that, the stories themselves, like I said, are a lot of them very folklore and mythological based, and I really super enjoyed them. They were different takes. Almost all of them were hopeful stories, which is very different for me. Unfortunately, with a lot of short story collections, I find that a lot of them are negative because that just seems to be what is big right now. Grimdark and negative stuff is the win these days. But a lot of these were hopeful, and a lot of these have happy endings, or a more hopeful bent at the end, and that sort of stuff is what I like and I want to see. So fantastic collection. I highly recommend this. This is one of the best short story collections I have read in a long time. And the final book that I will mention and has its own video review out or coming out soon, and that is Witch King by Martha Wells. I just finished that today. It just came out this week. I'm filming this the first week of June. I highly recommend it. If you like epic fantasy, very traditional journey epic fantasy with a dual timeline, I don't recommend it for like Murderbot fans. If you like Murderbot because it's short, fun, funny, and accessible, this is not those things. It is funny at times because Martha Wells is very funny, but it is not super accessible, I don't think, for casual fantasy readers or light general audience. If you're not used to kind of a steep learning curve on fantasy, I don't think it's very accessible. It's also dual timeline, and the humor is dialed back, and it deals with some heavy topics. So I loved it. If you like that sort of thing, you will love it, but I don't know that I recommend it for all Murderbot fans, just as a warning. If you want to know a little bit more, I kind of talk a little bit in a review about that, and that will be linked probably on the end card or coming soon. You should subscribe for that. And on that note, thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you have any thoughts, that sort of thing. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye.